a werewolf shifter romance written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. The scent of pine and damp earth, usually a comfort in their hidden den, was sharpened tonight by an undercurrent of ozone, the lingering kiss of the storm that had just passed. Moonlight, fierce and clean after the rain, speared through the narrow den opening, anointing the small, wriggling bundle in Danica's arms. A daughter. Relief, potent and dizzying, washed through Danica, loosening the knot of fear that had clung to her throughout the long labor. Her mate, Kaelin, nuzzled her shoulder, his own scent rich with pride and exhaustion. Danica breathed deeply, seeking that unique, ethereal fragrance that should mark her newborn, the whisper of starlight, the coolness of moon dust, the unmistakable signature of their Lunar Wolf lineage. It was there, faint, delicate as a moth's wing. But there, a smile, weak but radiant, touched Danica's lips. Kaelin rumbled a soft laugh, his large hand gently stroking the babe's downy head. She is a true child of the moon, Danica, like you. But then, moments passed. A subtle wrongness pricked at Danica's senses. The den, moments before alive, thrumming with their mingled joy and the newborn's nascent lunar energy, felt dimmer. The moonlight at the entrance, it seemed to recoil. She inhaled again, deeper. A knot formed in her stomach, that delicate moon dust scent. Was it fading? Her heart began a frantic tattoo against her ribs. Thump, thump, thump. Kaelin? Her voice, a thready whisper, the earlier joy curdling into nascent dread. He looked at her, his smile faltered. Terror bloomed in her eyes. He too bent closer, closer to their daughter, nostrils flaring, brow furrowed. I can barely sense it. His voice was tight. The air in the den grew colder, colder, a palpable chill, ancient, invasive, a void that seemed to emanate from the very shadows clinging to the den walls, shadows that writhed with an unnatural hunger, a silent, suffocating pressure. It descended upon them. Danica clutched her daughter tighter, tighter. A choked gasp tore from her throat as she saw it. The faint, silvery luminescence clinging to the babe's fur, the spark of her unawakened wolf. It was visibly receding, like a tide drawn away by an unseen, malevolent force. The unique, delicate scent of moon magic vanished, completely, replaced by nothing, a horrifying, unnatural scentlessness, anathema to their kind, their daughter, their precious Ayla, became a void in the olfactory tapestry of their world. That connection, Danica's primal, instinctual tether to her pup's spirit, it frayed, then snapped, leaving only an aching emptiness. "No!" Kaelin snarled, his own wolf rising, fury and despair warring within him. But there was no physical enemy to fight, only this crushing, insidious magic. Then, a whisper. Faint, mocking, cold as grave dust, it seemed to echo from the depths of the encroaching shadows, too faint for words, yet conveying absolute triumphant malice. Erased, hidden, broken. Tears streamed down Danica's face, hot, helpless, against Ayla's unnervingly still form. The babe still breathed, her small chest rising, falling, but the vibrant spark, the innate magic, the wolf, gone, smothered beneath an invisible shroud. Danica rocked her, a keening sound trapped deep in her throat. Kaelin sagged beside her, his strength, useless against this unseen foe. "They found us," he rasped, his voice raw with grief. "The Shadow Weavers, their curse." Danica looked down at her daughter, at the innocent face that should have shone with the moon's blessing. A fierce, desperate resolve solidified through her grief, a mother's promise. "They will not have her soul," she whispered, her voice trembling yet steel-edged, pressing a kiss to Ayla's forehead. "She will live, We will hide her, even from herself, if we must. The moonlight outside, it seemed to weep, and the den was left in a profound, chilling silence, heavy with the weight of a stolen birthright, and the long, dark path now stretching before their scentless, wolfless child. The hunt had already begun, though Ayla would not know it. Not for many, many years. The slop bucket felt heavier this morning, or maybe Ayla just felt weaker. Truth be told, it was always hard, so hard, because her arms were thin, not like the other pack girls. Sunlight, thin and watery, peeked over the jagged peaks surrounding the Silvermane den, but it never seemed to reach her. Instead, shadows clung to Ayla like her own skin, a constant reminder. She didn't belong. She didn't know what scared her more. The shadows? Or the cold glares from her pack? Moments later, she dumped the pig swill into the trough, the familiar sour smell making her nose wrinkle. Why me? Why always me? The question echoed in her head, a sad little bird trapped in a cage. Deep down, she knew the truth, or what they'd always told her. She was scentless, wolfless, a curse. Because of that, she was less than dirt to them. An older female, Mara, shoved past, knocking Ayla's shoulder, hard. "Watch it, Blank," Mara sneered, her eyes cold as winter ice. Ayla flinched, muttering a tiny, "Sorry," even though it wasn't her fault. To make things worse, a group of pups tumbled nearby, their playful yips and mock snarls, a sharp pain in Ayla's chest. They nipped, wrestled, their tiny bodies already hinting at the strong wolves they'd become. She felt it, clear as day, that sharp pang of longing. Oh, to run with them, to feel the shift, to belong. But that joy, it wasn't for her. Her goal today, like every day, was just to stay out of the way. Be invisible. Survive. Maybe it was fate that she clutched a smooth, cool stone in her pocket, a small, flat thing her mother, Danica, had pressed into her hand years ago, whispering, "Never forget the moon, little one." Ayla didn't know why, but it was her only treasure, her only secret. What did her mother mean? An open loop in her heart. Still, the day stretched before her, a long path of chores and casual cruelty. She just wanted one kind word, one soft look. But she knew better than to expect it, which meant she had to be strong, even if she felt like dust. After that, Ayla was sent to mend torn training dummies, her fingers clumsy with the thick needle. Nearby, a group of pack warriors, their chests puffed out, talked in low rumbles. Their words, like stones skipping across a dark pond, reached her. "Alpha Thorn, Blackwood Pack, coming for the gathering." A shiver, cold and sharp, ran down Ayla's spine. Even so, she kept her head down, pretending to focus on the ripped leather. Alpha Thorn, even his name sounded like breaking bones. A legend, a nightmare whispered to scare pups. Stronger than any 3 alphas, they said. More cunning than a shadow fox. And his Blackwood Pack? Fierce, unforgiving. What's worse, they were traditional, holding to the old ways, the old laws. What would they think of a blank? Like her? She didn't know what scared her more, their power or their judgment. "Heard he ripped out an alpha's throat last spring, just for looking at his territory wrong," one warrior, Bram, boasted, though he'd never been near Blackwood lands. Because of that, his story was probably just air. Hot air. Still, the fear it sparked, it was real. Another warrior, Silas, older, scarred, grunted. "Thorn doesn't suffer fools, or weakness." His eyes flickered towards Ayla, just for a split second, and her stomach twisted. No. In that moment, she wished the earth would swallow her whole. Was her very existence a weakness to be snuffed out? She'd once heard an elder tell a story, a chilling story, about a pack that cast out a malformed pup into the dead wastes. It was meant to ensure conformity. Could that be her fate if powerful alphas came? Could it? More importantly, Ayla wondered, why were they coming? Gatherings were rare, usually for big problems, or big alliances. Maybe it was fate, pulling strings she couldn't see. Deep down, she knew the truth. This gathering would bring trouble. Trouble always found her. Her goal became even smaller now, not just invisible to her pack, but invisible to all packs. As the silence stretched, punctuated only by the warrior's gruff talk, Ayla focused on her breathing. In, out. Just survive until tomorrow. Survive. Come morning, the air was thick. So thick with a tension Ayla could almost taste, like metal, and fear. The gathering was at the old stone circle, a ring of gray, moss-covered monoliths that hummed with ancient power. Ayla was there, of course, tasked with serving watered-down berry juice to the visiting alphas, a job designed to be demeaning, and to keep her in sight of her own alpha, a constant, silent warning. Her heart skipped, a frantic bird, every time a new group of wolves arrived, their scent strange, overwhelming. And then, he came. Alpha Thorn. The world seemed to hold its breath. As if pulled by a string, all eyes turned. He was a storm, given form, tall, broader than any wolf Ayla had ever seen, with hair as black as a moonless night and eyes, oh, those eyes, that seemed to pierce right through you. His scent hit her even from across the circle. Pine, cold air, and something ancient, like the earth itself, primal, terrifying. Her body moved on instinct, trying to shrink, to melt into the cold stone behind her. Without thinking, she kept her gaze fixed on the muddy hem of her tunic. Don't look. Don't look. If she didn't see him, maybe he wouldn't see her? A foolish hope, she knew. With every heartbeat, the air grew heavier. The moment their eyes locked, or rather, the moment she felt his gaze sweep over her section of the circle, a jolt, like ice and fire. It shot right through her. Before she could move, he looked away, his attention drawn by another alpha, but for that one terrifying second, Ayla felt seen, not like Mara saw her, with disgust, but like a hawk spotting a tiny mouse in a vast field. An open loop of dread tightened in her chest. Had he noticed her scentlessness? What did that brief, intense focus mean? What? As the silence stretched between the greetings of the alphas, Ayla's only goal was to breathe. Just breathe. That's why she focused on the tiny, smooth stone in her pocket, its coolness a small anchor in a sea of fear. She didn't know what scared her more, the power rolling off Thorn in waves, or the strange, unreadable flicker she thought she'd seen in his eyes when his gaze passed her. Which meant this day was going to be longer and harder than she ever imagined. The auras of so many alphas, so much power. It was like being surrounded by crackling lightning, and she was just a dry leaf, waiting to be scorched. The air thickened, heavy, like a coming storm, even though the sun was high. Ayla tried to make herself smaller, so small, her back pressed against a cold, uncaring stone of the circle. Her thoughts spun, all around the terrifying Alpha Thorn. What followed was a sudden scuffle, erupting near her. Young warriors from a visiting pack, posturing, shoving. Before she could move, one stumbled, his arm flailing, and then he crashed, right into Ayla. A small cry escaped her lips, the tray of berry juice flying, a splash of purple against the gray. She was falling right into the path of him. Without warning, strong arms, hard as oak. They caught her, her world tilted. She landed against a chest that felt like solid rock, the scent of pine and wild, clean earth, overwhelming her. Alpha Thorn, In that moment, her breath hitched. Time stood still. A jolt, hot and strange, shot through her, more powerful than any fear. But then, her own alpha Valerius snarled, his voice dripping with disgust. "Useless, scentless cur! Get your filth off him, Thorn!" As if fate demanded it, a growl, deeper than thunder, ripped from Alpha Thorn's chest. It was a sound that vibrated through Ayla, through the very stones beneath their feet, silencing everything. His arms tightened around her, a human shield. The moment their eyes locked, her terrified gaze meeting his blazing golden stare, he spoke, his voice a low, possessive rumble. It ached in her bones. "She is no cur." A beat later, his voice dropped even lower, a dark promise. "She is mine." And just like that, everything changed. His words, a brand, his claim, a cage. Why her? Why? This had to be some terrible mistake, some cruel joke. She felt it, clear as day, the shift in the world around her, the stunned silence, the outrage in Valerius's eyes, her own heart hammering like a trapped bird. What followed was Alpha Valerius's face. It turned a dark, ugly red. "Yours!" he spat, his voice tight with fury. "Thorn, have you lost your senses? She's a blank, a nothing." Truth be told, Ayla wanted to disappear, to sink into the earth. Maybe it was fate that she was trapped in Thorn's unyielding grip. Alpha Thorn didn't even glance at Valerius. Instead, his golden eyes stayed locked on Ayla, a strange, unreadable light in their depths. His voice, when he finally spoke to Valerius, was calm, cold, utterly final. "My claim is made, Valerius. She leaves with me." That's why Ayla knew. There was no escape. Because an alpha's claim, especially one made so publicly, by an alpha like Thorn, it was law, unbreakable. Or so the elders always whispered. Was this why her mother gave her that stone? To remind her of a strength she didn't know she had? A strength to face this? "You can't be serious," Valerius choked out. "She brings bad luck. She's an ill omen." Still, Thorn just shifted Ayla slightly behind him, a clear gesture of possession. His scent, so wild and overwhelming, was all around her. Ayla's thoughts spun. Why would such a powerful alpha want her, a scentless, wolfless nobody? It made no sense. None. She didn't know what scared her more, staying with Valerius's cruelty, or going with this terrifying, unpredictable alpha. Before either could speak further, Thorn simply turned, his arm like a steel band around Ayla's waist, and began to walk towards his Blackwood warriors. Without another word, they fell in around them, a formidable, silent escort. No matter how hard she tried, Ayla couldn't stop the trembling in her legs. She stumbled, but Thorn's grip held her steady. The journey to the Blackwood territory passed in a blur of fear and numb disbelief. Each step took her further from the only miserable life she'd ever known, towards... what? She didn't dare to guess. Towards what? Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, walking through dense, silent forests that seemed to watch her with ancient eyes, they arrived. The Blackwood territory was different. Wilder. Sharper. The air hummed with a raw energy that made Ayla's skin prickle. She saw warriors, their faces hard, their eyes missing nothing. Everywhere she looked, there were wary, suspicious glances directed her way. They knew. They knew she was different. Less. Her chest ached with a familiar loneliness, even surrounded by so many. Soon after, Ayla was led to a small, clean den, surprisingly comfortable, with soft furs piled on a sleeping ledge. But then she noticed them. 2 stern-faced warriors, posted outside her door. A cage then, just a slightly nicer one. Because of that, a new kind of fear settled in. A cold dread. What did Alpha Thorn plan for her? She felt it, clear as day, that she was a prisoner, no matter how soft the furs. Not only that, but she heard whispers. Whispers from passing pack members. The scentless one. Thorn's strange prize. What does he see in her? Deep down, she knew the truth, or her version of it. She was a mistake, a burden he'd soon regret. She clutched her mother's moonstone, its coolness a small comfort. Would she ever understand its purpose? This open loop in her understanding. It felt like a gaping hole in her soul. That night, Alpha Thorn himself appeared at her den entrance. His presence filled the small space, making it hard to breathe. He was a shadow against the dying light, his golden eyes glowing faintly. He said nothing, not for a long moment. Just stared. His gaze intense, possessive, and utterly unreadable. Ayla's voice trembled when she finally managed a whisper. Alpha. Why me? His only answer was a low rumble in his chest, a sound that could have been a growl or something else entirely. He stepped inside, closer and closer still. The space between them burned. What did he want? Oh, what did he want from her? The space between them burned as Alpha Thorn stepped fully into her small den. His shadow, it seemed to eat the flickering lamplight. Ayla's breath caught. He was so big, so powerful. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't stop trembling. Her earlier question, why me, hung heavy in the air, unanswered. Instead of speaking, he just looked at her. And then, his gaze, sharp as a newly honed blade, swept around the den, noting the soft furs, the small portion of uneaten stew from earlier. His voice, when it finally came, was a low rumble, like distant thunder. You are too thin. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. A judgment. Ayla's heart skipped a beat. Was he angry about the stew? Her thoughts spun. I'm not very hungry, Alpha, she managed, her voice barely a squeak. He moved closer, and she instinctively pressed back against the furs. Because of that, his scent, that wild mix of pine and storm, filled her senses, making her head swim. You will eat, he stated, his golden eyes unblinking. You are under my protection now. Protection? Or possession? She didn't know what scared her more. After that, he began to ask questions, sharp, direct, about her old pack, about her blankness. No scent at all, he probed, his gaze unwavering. Never shifted, not even as a pup. Each question felt like a poke at a raw wound. Truth be told, Ayla just wanted to curl up and hide. No, Alpha, she whispered, her eyes downcast. Never. Deep down, she knew the truth. He was trying to understand what was wrong with her, just like everyone else. More importantly, what would he do once he realized she was truly broken? He gave a curt nod. See that she eats properly, he commanded to the guards outside, his voice carrying easily. And just like that, he was gone, leaving Ayla shivering, with more questions than answers, which meant her life here. It was still a confusing, terrifying puzzle. From there, things changed a little. Ayla received more food, stews thick with meat, warm bread. The furs on her ledge were replaced with even softer ones. Still, the eyes of the Blackwood pack followed her everywhere, cold and curious. She felt it, clear as day, thou, their unspoken questions. Why was she here? What was she to their powerful Alpha? Because of that, she mostly stayed in her den, clutching her mother's smooth moonstone. It was an open loop, this small, cool stone, its significance just beyond her grasp, yet it was her only link to a past she barely remembered. One night, the moon was a perfect silver coin in the black sky. Ayla couldn't sleep. A strange energy hummed under her skin, a restless ache in her bones. As if pulled by a string, she went to the den opening. The moonlight spilled onto the forest floor, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. And then She had a dream, or maybe it was a vision, so vivid. She was running, fast and free, under that same silver moon. But she wasn't her. She was something else, something powerful and filled with light. Her heart pounded when she woke, the feeling of the dream clinging to her like morning mist. What did it mean? Could a blank, a nothing, dream such things? Moments later, an old she-wolf approached her den. Her fur was a soft gray, like winter twilight, and her eyes held a deep, knowing calm. Her name was Nia, the pack's healer, Ayla had heard. Nia didn't speak at first, just looked at Ayla with a gaze that seemed to see right through her fear. "The moon calls to all true wolves, child," Nia said softly, her voice like rustling leaves. "Even those who think they cannot hear it." Without another word, Nia offered Ayla a small bundle of dried herbs. "For sleep," she said. But her eyes held a question, a flicker of something Ayla couldn't name, which meant maybe, just maybe, not everyone here saw her as just a curse. Soon after, a different kind of tension gripped the Blackwood territory. Word spread like wildfire. Alpha Kale of the Bloodfang pack was near the borders. Ayla heard the whispers. Kale was cruel, ambitious, always looking for weakness. And then, a grim-faced warrior came to her den. "Alpha Thorn summons you. Now!" Her stomach dropped. Why her? Because of that, fear, cold and sharp, pricked at her skin. What followed was Ayla being escorted to a clearing near the southern border. Alpha Thorn stood there, a silent mountain of power facing another alpha. This one was leaner, with a sneer permanently etched on his face and eyes like chips of ice. Kale. The air crackled. As if the forest watched, every wolf was still tense. "So, Thorn?" Kale's voice dripped with mockery, his gaze flicking dismissively over Ayla, who Thorn had positioned slightly behind him. "Is this the great prize you stole from Valerius? This scentless runt?" He spat the last words. Before Ayla could even flinch, a sound ripped from Thorn's chest, a low, guttural growl, so full of primal fury it made the leaves tremble. In the span of a breath, he moved, not attacking, but shifting his stance, placing himself more fully between Ayla and Kale. A living shield. His scent flooded the air. Pine, storm, and pure, undiluted alpha rage. "You will not speak of her that way, Kale." Thorn's voice was deceptively soft, yet it vibrated with deadly intent. "She is Blackwood! She is mine!" The possessiveness in his tone, absolute. Kale's eyes narrowed, but he seemed to recognize a line he shouldn't cross. Maybe it was fate, or maybe just Thorn's sheer terrifying presence. But Kale eventually backed down, offering a curt, disrespectful nod before retreating with his warriors. As the silence roared in the aftermath, Thorn turned. His golden eyes found Ayla's. And in their depths, she saw not just fury, but a fierce, burning protectiveness that stole her breath and made her world tilt all over again. Under the weight of his stare, after Alpha Kale had slunk away, Alpha Thorn finally turned, fully, to Ayla. His scent, still sharp with leftover rage, also carried something else, a strange concern. Ayla's pulse raced. She expected him to be angry, furious at her for causing trouble. Instead, his gruff voice. It was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Are you harmed?" His golden eyes scanned her, not with judgment, but with a fierce, searching light. She felt it, clear as day, that this was different. Her voice trembled. "No, Alpha. Thank you." Because of that simple, unexpected question, something tiny inside her, a frozen bud of hope, dared to wiggle. Just a little. Later that night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. He had protected her, like she was important, which meant maybe, just maybe, he didn't see her as entirely worthless. Gathering all her courage, when he brought her evening meal himself, a new, unsettling habit of his, she spoke. "Alpha Thorn, why did you claim me?" The words, a breathless whisper. He looked at her for a long time, his face a mask. Then he surprised her. "Some bonds are not chosen, little wolf. They simply are." He didn't explain more, but then he added, so quietly she almost missed it, "This pack is my life, its safety, my burden." In that moment, she saw not just the terrifying alpha, but a male, carrying a heavy weight. Maybe it was fate that she felt a tiny pang of understanding, of wanting to ease that burden, even though she was so small, so broken. Truth be told, his admission, however small, made him seem less like a storm and more like a mountain, still huge, still powerful, but maybe, just maybe, a place one could find shelter. As the silence stretched, Ayla found herself saying, "My old pack. They said I was a curse." The words, they tumbled out before she could stop them. She didn't know what scared her more, saying it aloud, or his reaction. He just watched her, his expression unreadable. Before either could speak further, Naya, the old healer, appeared at the den entrance, her face grave. "Alpha Thorn, Ayla, I must speak with you both." Ayla's heart skipped a beat. This felt important, ominous. As if summoned by the weight of unspoken things, they followed her to her own den, a place filled with the scent of dried herbs and old knowledge. Nia unrolled an ancient, brittle scroll. "The old tales speak of lunar wolves," she began, her voice a low hum. "Wolves born under the full moon's direct blessing, gifted with abilities beyond others. Healing, a deep connection to the moon's own magic, a light against true darkness." Ayla's thoughts spun. What did this have to do with her? "They were hunted," Nia continued, her eyes sad. "Their power feared by those who craved darkness, the Shadow Weavers." At the same time, Ayla felt a cold dread, the name like a forgotten nightmare. "Ayla," Nia said, her gaze piercing, "your mother, Danica, was of this line, and you were born with that same mark, that same potential." Because of that, Ayla shook her head, her breath catching. "No, I'm nothing. I'm scentless, wolfless." "The curse, child," Nia explained gently. "A powerful, ancient curse laid by the Shadow Weavers to hide you, to break you before you could ever know your strength." Thorn, who had been silent, now spoke, his voice tight. "Why?" Nia pointed to a passage on the scroll. "There is a prophecy," she whispered. "When the lost moon finds its alpha sun, and the eclipse bleeds the sky, their fated bond shall break the ancient chains, or shadows will devour all light." Her world tilted. Ayla stared at Thorn. Alpha sun? Fated bond? This was too much. She didn't know what scared her more, being a curse, or being this prophesied being. "The eclipse," Nia said, her voice urgent, "is less than 2 moons away." As if the world narrowed at Nia's words, a chilling wind suddenly snaked through the den, extinguishing the lamps. Darkness fell like a suffocating blanket. Ayla cried out, a raw sound of terror. Without warning, the air grew icy cold, and whispers, like dry leaves skittering across bone, seemed to surround them. Her mother's moonstone, tucked in her pocket, suddenly burned, an intense cold against her skin. What was happening? "Shadow Weavers!" Thorn's snarl ripped through the blackness. Ayla felt his powerful body move in front of hers, a warm, solid shield. She heard the shing of a blade being drawn. Naya, surprisingly armed, and then shadowy tendrils, darker than the darkness itself, began to coalesce, reaching for Ayla. They were like grasping claws, made of pure fear and malice. Her instinct surged. She wanted to run, to hide. But Thorn's presence, his scent, anchored her even as terror threatened to swallow her whole. Because of that, she pressed herself against his back, trembling. "They sense your awakening power, child," Nia grunted, her voice strained as she deflected a shadowy lash with her knife. "The prophecy's reveal has alerted them." To make things worse, Ayla felt a horrifying, draining pull, as if something was trying to suck the very life from her. Thorn roared, a sound of pure alpha fury, and a wave of his power, hot and fierce, pulsed outwards, making the shadows recoil momentarily. "They will not have her," he declared, his voice a vow. Still, the shadows pressed in again, relentless. More importantly, Ayla knew. This was because of her. She was the target. She was the danger. "The moon's altar," Nia cried out, her voice urgent amidst the chaos. "It's the only place to break such a curse, before the eclipse." Thorn's arm snaked around Ayla's waist, pulling her impossibly closer. "Then to the moon's altar we go," he bit out, his focus absolute. Which meant their perilous journey. It had just truly begun. In the quiet that followed the Shadow Weaver's attack, the den felt cold, violated. Ayla's heart, it still hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Nia was tending to a shallow cut on Thorn's arm, her face grim. And then Alpha Thorn looked at Ayla, his golden eyes blazing, fierce, unyielding. "The moon's altar," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Nia says it's our only chance." His gaze held hers, and it wasn't a command. Not quite. It was an invitation? A question? Because of that, Ayla felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, pushing back some of the icy fear. For so long, others had decided her fate. Her old pack, the curse, the Shadow Weavers. But now, she took a deep breath. The scent of pine and Thorn's own powerful musk filled her senses. I will go," she whispered, her voice small but surprisingly steady. Truth be told, terror still clawed at her. But something else was there too. A tiny spark. Maybe it was hope? Or maybe it was just the desperate need to do something. To fight for the life Thorn had so unexpectedly given back to her. "I want to break this curse," she said, a little stronger now. "I want to live." As the words left her lips, a ghost of a smile touched Thorn's mouth. "Then you will not face it alone, little wolf," he vowed, his voice resonating with a power that settled deep in her bones. "I swear on my blood, on my pack, I will see you to the moon's altar, and I will protect you with my last breath." The air thickened between them, charged with his oath. Her soul answered his vow, a silent promise of her own, which meant there was no turning back, not for either of them, not now. This was their path, together. From there, their small group, Thorn, Ayla, Nia, and two of Thorn's most trusted warriors, the stoic Gideon and the sharp-eyed Lyra, set out under the cloak of a new moon. The journey was harder than Ayla could have ever imagined. They crossed rushing, ice-cold rivers that threatened to sweep her away, Thorn's strong hand her only anchor. They climbed treacherous mountain passes where the wind howled like a hungry beast, and loose scree slid beneath her worn boots. Once, a patrol from a rival pack, hyena-like in their opportunism, tried to ambush them. Ayla watched, heart in her throat, as Thorn and his warriors moved with deadly grace, a whirlwind of strength and snarls, grrr, driving the attackers back into the shadows. Because of that, she saw the true meaning of an alpha's protection. He was not just powerful, he was smart, always watching, always a step ahead. One night, huddled around a tiny, smokeless fire in a hidden cave, the wind screaming outside, Ayla found herself next to Thorn. The space between them burned, yet it was a comforting heat against the biting cold. "Are you always like this?" she dared to ask, her voice barely audible above the storm. Like what? He rumbled, his gaze fixed on the flames. So, strong? So, sure. He was silent for a long moment. Then, he said, his voice rough, "Strength is a shield, Ayla. Sometimes it is all an alpha has to protect what matters." His eyes met hers in the firelight, and she saw a flicker of something ancient. Something lonely? She felt it, clear as day, a crack in his armor. And then, she found herself whispering about her mother's moonstone, about the faint, lost memories of a love she barely knew. He listened. He just listened. Which meant maybe, just maybe. He saw more than just a curse when he looked at her. More than just a burden. Soon after, Nia led them into a part of the forest she called the Whispering Woods. The trees here were ancient, their branches like skeletal fingers, and an unnatural silence clung to the air. "The Shadow Weaver's influence is strong here," Nia warned, her voice low. "Be on your guard." Ayla clutched her moonstone, its coldness a familiar comfort. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Without warning, the attack came, but it wasn't from the shadows. Instead, Lyra, sharp-eyed Lyra, who had shared her rations with Ayla, who had offered a gruff but not unkind word, spun. A wicked-looking blade suddenly in her hand, aimed not at an unseen enemy but at Thorn's exposed back. "No!" Ayla screamed. Gideon roared, intercepting Lyra, and then two other shifters, cloaked and grim, burst from the trees, their snarls echoing. Betrayal. Her world tilted. Lyra? A traitor? Working with them? As if the forest watched, a brutal fight erupted. Thorn was a whirlwind of fury, protecting Ayla even as he battled the traitors. But then, one of the cloaked shifters lunged past Gideon, his claws aimed at Thorn's throat. Ayla's body moved on instinct. Before she could think, a desperate scream tore from her, not just sound, but something else. A pulse of blinding, silvery light erupted from her, like a silent thunderclap. The attacker howled, stumbling back, clutching his eyes. The tension broke, just enough for Thorn to whirl and strike him down. In the quiet that followed, everyone stared at Ayla, shock on their faces. Even Thorn looked at her with a new, stunned intensity. What had she done? Lyra, seeing her allies fall, snarled and vanished into the deep woods. Ayla's chest ached. The betrayal. A cold, sharp pain. But under the weight of his stare, Thorn's unwavering gaze now holding a new awe. Her resolve hardened into something fierce. They would reach that altar. They had to, despite that terrible betrayal by Lyra, and the wounds they now carried, and their small group pressed on. The air itself. It seemed to change as they drew nearer to the place Nia called the moon's altar. It grew heavy, cold, and a sickly sweet scent, like rotting moonlight, pricked at Ayla's nose, making her stomach churn. What followed was them breaking through a final curtain of ancient, gnarled trees into a clearing. Ayla's breath caught. This was no place of gentle power. No, instead, the moon's altar, a ring of blackened, jagged stones, pulsed with a faint, ugly purple light. And then she saw them. Figures in dark, swirling cloaks, shadow weavers, dozens of them. They were already there, chanting in low, guttural voices, their forms like holes in the fading daylight as the sky began to bruise for the coming eclipse. At the center, on a raised dais, stood one taller figure, a staff of black, twisted wood in their hand, radiating a power that made Ayla's bones ache. The Shadow Weaver leader. Ayla's fragile hope, which had flickered to life on the journey. It died, like a snuffed candle. They knew, Nia whispered, her voice tight with despair. They were waiting. Because of that. Thorn moved instantly in front of Ayla, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Gideon flanked him, his stance ready. But they were so outnumbered. So terribly outnumbered. Truth be told, Ayla felt a cold, creeping dread snake around her heart. This was a trap. A perfectly laid trap. She didn't know what scared her more. The dark magic pulsing from the altar, or the cold, calculating eyes of the leader as they finally turned and fixed directly on her. As if summoned, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of their victory. The little lunar stray. The Shadow Weaver leader's voice, like silk sliding over broken glass, amplified by their dark magic. It slithered into Ayla's ears, into her mind. Did you truly think you could escape your destiny, child? The one we wove for you? Ayla flinched as if struck. More importantly, the leader took a slow step forward. Your mother, Danica, was a fool. She thought she could hide you. But we are patient. Thorn snarled, "You will not touch her." He lunged, a blur of protective fury, Gideon right with him. But then, the other Shadow Weavers moved, a wave of darkness and grasping tendrils. The fight was desperate, brutal. Ayla watched in horror as Thorn battled, his strength immense, yet even he was being forced back. She felt it, clear as day, her own uselessness, her own nothingness. Useless, the leader echoed, as if hearing her thoughts. Oh, was this part of their magic too? But of course you are. That was the point of the curse, little one. Their laughter, a chilling cackle. Not just to hide your power, but to hollow you out from within, to make you believe you were nothing. Scentless, wolfless, worthless. Each word, a poisoned dart, finding its mark in Ayla's already wounded soul. Because of that, her knees felt weak. What's worse, she saw a shadowy blade slip past Thorn's guard. He cried out, a sharp sound of pain, clutching his side as dark blood bloomed on his tunic. "Thorn!" Ayla screamed, her voice cracking. "He stumbled!" And the leader smiled, a slow, cruel curve of their lips. Deep down, she knew the truth. This was all her fault. Her curse had brought him to this. Her brokenness would be his end. Her chest ached, with a pain so vast, it threatened to swallow her whole. As if pulled by a string, shadowy tendrils shot out, wrapping around Ayla's limbs, yanking her forward. She struggled, but it was like fighting smoke. They dragged her towards the corrupted altar. Thorn roared her name, trying to reach her, but two Shadow Weavers slammed into him, driving him to his knees. His golden eyes, usually so fierce, were clouded with pain. Yet they never left hers. "It is time," the leader intoned, raising their black staff as the moon, now a sliver of blood in the sky, began its full eclipse. The altar thirsts, and your alpha son can only watch as his little lost moon is extinguished, or remade in our image. Ayla's thoughts spun. Remade? What did they mean? What? No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free. She saw Gideon fall, overwhelmed. Nia fought bravely, but she too was disarmed, restrained. And Thorn. Oh, Thorn. He was still fighting, but his movements were slower, weaker. The blood, from his side, a spreading stain. To make things worse, the leader gestured with their staff, and a bolt of pure shadow struck Thorn. He cried out, a strangled sound, and collapsed, unmoving. "No!" Ayla shrieked, the sound raw, torn from her soul, her heart shattered. He was gone. In that moment, all the fight drained out of her. It was over. They had won, because she was what they said she was, a curse, a nothing, a bringer of pain and death to anyone who dared to care for her. Her mother's moonstone felt like ice against her skin, a mockery. The leader's chilling laughter echoed as they approached her. So easy, they crooned. So broken. Ayla closed her eyes. Utter despair, cold and absolute, consumed her. This was her end. and she had dragged everyone she cared about down with her. Down. In the stillness that followed, Thorn's collapse, Ayla's world was just cold, empty. The Shadow Weaver leaders, chilling laughter echoed a cruel victory song. So broken, they'd said, and Ayla believed it. She was. But then, her gaze found Thorn, his still form, pale beneath the blood-red light of the full eclipse. He had fought for her. He, the powerful alpha, had shielded her, this scentless, wolfless nobody. He had called her Little Wolf, and because of that, something deep inside Ayla, something she thought long dead, flickered. A tiny, stubborn spark. Her mother's moonstone suddenly pulsed with a faint warmth against her skin, a warmth that spread, chasing away a fraction of the icy despair. It wasn't about being worthy anymore. It wasn't about the curse, or the pack, or even herself. It was about him. As if fate demanded it, a raw, primal scream built in her chest. She wouldn't let them win. She wouldn't let Thorn die. Not like this. The love she felt for him, so new, so terrifying, so unexpectedly fierce, it ignited that spark into a raging inferno. Her body moved on instinct. Before she could think, the shadowy tendrils holding her sizzled, then snapped, as a wave of pure silver light exploded from her. It wasn't a scream of terror, this time, but a roar of pure, untamed power. The Shadow Weavers stumbled back, shielding their eyes from the sudden, blinding radiance. Even the leader looked surprised. In that moment, Ayla felt not broken, but new, terrifyingly, wonderfully, new. She felt it, clear as day, a wild, surging power thrumming through her veins, like the moon itself had come alive inside her. What followed was Ayla standing free, bathed in her own silvery light, the air around her crackling with an energy she didn't understand but somehow knew. The Shadow Weavers were regrouping, their surprise turning to snarls of outrage. But Ayla's focus was singular, the moon's altar, the eclipse, her power. Deep down, she knew the truth, or a new truth dawning within her. The curse, meant to break her, had also, in a way, shielded her. It had hidden her true essence, letting it grow, untapped, until now. That's why she felt this incredible surge. As if pulled by a string, her gaze went to the very center of the corrupted altar, where the dark magic pulsed strongest. And then, she understood, not with words, but with a deep, bone-deep certainty. She had to meet that power, head on. "Child, what are you doing?" Nia cried out, her voice filled with fear and awe. Ayla didn't answer. There was no time for words. This was her only chance. Her only chance to save Thorn, her only chance to save herself. Because of that, she began to walk towards the heart of the altar. Each step was an agony, the corrupted magic there fighting against her new pure light. But she pressed on. No matter how hard she tried to ignore the pain, it was like walking through fire and ice at the same time. Still, the image of Thorn, pale and still, burned in her mind. For him. She would do this for him. Maybe it was fate that she reached the central stone just as the eclipse reached its absolute blood-soaked peak. Her instincts surged. This was it. She had to embrace it all. The pain, the power, the truth of who she was. She didn't know what scared her more. Failing, or what she might become if she succeeded. And then, Ayla closed her eyes and opened herself to it, to the raw, wild torrent of lunar energy pouring down from the eclipsed moon, amplified and twisted by the ancient, corrupted altar. It slammed into her with the force of a tidal wave, pain, blinding, searing, tearing through every part of her being. She screamed, a sound that was both agony and something more, something primal. Her bones remembered him, Thorn, and the need to save him. In that moment, she wasn't just Ayla, the outcast. She was more, so much more. The curse, that old familiar shroud of nothingness, fought back. It clawed at her, whispering all her old fears, all her old shames. Worthless, broken, blank. But a new voice roared louder now. The voice of the moon, the voice of her ancestors, the voice of her own reawakening wolf. As if the forest held its breath, she felt Thorn. Somewhere behind her, she sensed him stir, a flicker of his life force reignited by her surging power. He was fighting too, fighting to live, fighting for her. Because of that, she fought harder. She embraced the pain, the power, the light, the shadow. She tore at the curse with metaphorical claws, ripping it apart thread by thread, between one breath and the next. Something inside her shattered, not her spirit, but the chains that had bound it for so long. And then, with a final earth-shattering cry that was both wolf and woman, light and fury, the curse broke. What followed was an explosion of pure silver-white energy that blasted outwards from the altar, sending shadow weavers flying, cleansing the corrupted stones. And Ayla was changing, shifting, becoming. Her true lunar wolf essence, magnificent and terrible and beautiful, finally unleashed upon the world. As her wolf stirred, erupted from within, Ayla felt a power like a roaring silver fire. She was bigger than she'd ever dreamed, her fur the color of moonlight on snow, and a scent, her scent, flowed from her, rich and wild, filled with the magic of the moon itself. It was a scent that called to Thorn, and with a single glance she saw him rising, his wounds already healing under the altar's now pure silver light, his golden eyes blazing with love and fierce pride. He shifted too, his own magnificent black wolf a shadow of power beside her light. The Shadow Weaver leader shrieked, a sound of pure hatred. "Impossible! You were broken!" But Ayla was not broken anymore. In fact, she had never felt so whole. Not anymore, she thought, a silent snarl in her mind that Thorn seemed to hear, to echo. Because of that, they moved as one. He was the earth-shattering strength. She was the moon's ethereal magic. She lashed out with claws of moonlight, tearing through the shadowy tendrils. Thorn met the leader's dark staff with a clash of fang and fury. Growl! The remaining Shadow Weavers tried to intervene, but Naya and Gideon, revitalized by the altar's cleansed energy, held them back, fighting with a renewed ferocity. This was it, the final battle. For their lives, for their future, for their love. The leader lunged at Thorn, a blade of pure shadow forming in its hand. Before it could strike, Ayla leaped, a silver comet intercepting the blow with a shield of her own light. The impact jarred her to her core, but she held. And then, Thorn was there, his jaws closing around the leader's staff, snapping it in two. A horrifying scream tore from the leader as their power unraveled. As the truth unraveled for them, they had lost. With a final, desperate surge, Ayla and Thorn struck together, light and shadow, sun and moon, Alpha and Luna, and just like that, the Shadow Weaver leader dissolved into nothing but fading dust and a mournful sigh on the wind. The air cleared. The battle was won. As the echo faded from the Shadow Weaver leader's demise, the blood-red light of the eclipse gave way to the soft, gentle colors of true dawn. Ayla stood, panting, her magnificent lunar wolf form trembling with leftover adrenaline. And then she felt Thorn beside her, his massive black wolf nuzzling her flank, his scent a comforting balm. Without another word, a silent understanding passed between them. Slowly, achingly, Ayla let her human form return. She felt different, the scentlessness gone, replaced by a soft, silvery fragrance that was uniquely hers. The hollowness inside her, the one that had ached for so long. It was filled. She was whole. Thorn shifted too, his eyes, so full of love, drinking her in. He reached for her, his touch gentle on her arm. Ayla, he breathed, her name a prayer. She saw the remaining slashes on his skin, dark against his fairness. Without thinking, she placed her hand over the worst of them. A soft, silver glow emanated from her palm, and as if summoned, the wound beneath her touch began to knit together, leaving only faint white lines. His breath caught. Nia and Gideon approached, their faces etched with awe and exhaustion. A true lunar, Nia whispered, tears in her ancient eyes. The prophecy, fulfilled. Ayla looked at Thorn, and a shy smile touched her lips. Maybe it was fate, but this new power. It didn't feel terrifying. It felt right. Because of that, she knew they had truly won more than just a battle. The moon's altar around them seemed to sigh, clean and pure once more, its stones now gleaming with a soft, welcoming light, which meant it was time to go home. By the time they reached the Blackwood territory, the news of their victory and of Ayla's true nature had somehow traveled ahead of them. The entire pack was gathered, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and dawning hope. As Ayla walked beside Thorn, no longer hiding, no longer afraid, a hush fell over them. Her mother's moonstone, still in her pocket, felt warm, like a happy sigh. She felt it, clear as day. This was where she belonged. Thorn stopped before his pack, his arm possessively, lovingly around Ayla's waist. His voice boomed, filled with pride. Blackwood pack, I present to you Ayla, my true mate, your Luna. A lunar wolf of legend has returned to us. For a moment there was silence, and then a single howl rose, then another and another, until the air was filled with a chorus of joyous, welcoming howls that vibrated through Ayla's very soul. Tears welled in her eyes, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of joy, because these were her people. This was her home. Ayla stepped forward, her voice clear and steady, no longer a whisper. I am Ayla, she said, her gaze sweeping over them, warm and unafraid. And I will stand with my alpha, and with all of you, to protect our home, our family. The answering roar of approval was deafening. Later that night, Ayla stood with Thorn on a moonlit cliff, overlooking their peaceful valley. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised forever. My Luna, he murmured against her skin. My love. Her soul answered. She was no longer broken, no longer a curse. She was Ayla, the Lunar Wolf, loved. And finally, home. And just like that, everything changed. For the better. Forever. Epilogue. Mood, content, peaceful, enduring love. Trope. Happily ever after, a new dawn. 1 year later, under the soft glow of a full, friendly moon, Ayla stood beside Thorn on that same familiar cliff. The air was cool and sweet with the scent of pine and blooming moonflowers. Her hand rested in his, their fingers intertwined, a comfortable, perfect fit. Down below, the Blackwood den lights twinkled like fallen stars, and the sounds of the pack, laughter, the playful yips of pups, the low murmur of conversation, drifted up to them, a melody of peace. Ayla leaned her head against Thorn's strong shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. It was a feeling she still sometimes couldn't believe was real. This peace, this belonging, this love. Truth be told, a part of her would always remember the cold, the fear, the loneliness of her past. But then, those memories no longer had sharp edges. Instead, they were just reminders of how far she'd come. Her mother's moonstone, which she now wore on a thin leather cord around her neck, felt warm against her skin. She finally understood its silent message, a legacy of strength, of light, of a love that even the darkest curse couldn't truly extinguish. Because of that, she could look at her own reflection in Thorn's golden eyes and see not a broken outcast, but Ayla, the Luna of Blackwood, a true lunar wolf. She felt it, clear as day, her own inner light, steady and bright. Thorn squeezed her hand gently. "What are you thinking, my little wolf?" he rumbled, his voice still that deep, possessive sound that now made her heart sing instead of tremble. Ayla smiled up at him. "Just how happy I am," she whispered. "How loved." His eyes softened, a rare and precious sight that was hers alone. "As am I, Ayla," he said, his gaze full of a love so deep it still sometimes stole her breath. "You are my heart, my moon, my everything." Not only that, but he then gestured down to the den. "Look at them, our pack. They thrive because of you, because of the hope you brought back to us." Ayla saw young wolves playing freely, their scents bright and clear, no fear in their eyes. She saw mates walking together, their bonds strong and open, which meant their victory at the moon's altar had healed more than just her. Deep down, she knew the truth. Their love had created a new dawn for them all. As the silence stretched comfortable and complete, they watched their world. And just like that, everything changed into a beautiful, peaceful forever. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.